Excited to have another class. And today we're going to study a little bit about we're going to learn about the blessings on the Torah. Every morning we have to thank God for the greatness, for the opportunity to study Torah. And we are very excited about that. It's great joy. The Jewish people have thrived and survived and grown, and because we study Torah on a regular basis. So we thank God for it. So we're going to open up the Siddur on page 9. Siddur here. Page 9, we're looking at the blessings of the Torah. And last week and the week before, we discussed that after we made the blessings on the Torah, we have to study a little Torah. So the first thing you do at the end of the brachot every morning, study a section of the Torah. So we studied the section that we studied, the sample section, like a little sample that we're given, was the section about the blessings of the Kohanim. And we spoke at great length about how the blessing for the Kohanim works. And the 3 stanzas, and we studied it at great depth. So now you have a little bit to think about every morning when you say the blessing of the Torah and you learn about the blessing of the Kohanim. Today we continue from that on to a piece of the oral tradition. So last week we studied the written Torah in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers, where it speaks about the Birkat Kohanim. So that's a section from the written Torah. And today we're going to learn a little section from the oral tradition. Now you have to realize that when God gave the Torah to Moses, it wasn't just the written Torah. There was an oral tradition which was given with Moses to explain the different parts and words of the Torah. Without the oral tradition, we don't understand really what's coming off in the Torah. Okay, the Torah says you should put on phylacteries. No one even knows what a phylactery is. What's phylacteries? Some Greek word. The Torah wasn't given in Greek. But the Torah says you should place it as a sign on your head and a symbol between your eyes. What's the sign and what's the symbol? And now today we know that it's tefillin. Tefillin is black boxes, painted black, they're made out of hide of an animal. There's 4 sections of the Torah that are in the tefillin, 4 sections which speak about God's powers, God, that there's a one God in the world and that he redeemed the Jews from Egypt. 4 sections of the Torah are placed into those boxes. We would never know that. What is the sign on your head and the symbol between your eyes, if not for the oral tradition? So the Torah is a book that we would never know. So if somebody got the book, the 5 books of Moses, without the explanation, without the Kol's notes, whatever you want to call it, without the notes on the Torah that were given to Moses to explain the pieces of the Torah, we would never know. We would have a different religion. And so it was that many people that found a book of the Bible and decided they want to follow the Old Testament, they want to follow the Bible and to do exactly what it says there. And they started following the Torah just based on the book. So they started doing things. It was a different religion. It wasn't the religion of the Jewish people because they followed literally. And as Jews, we know we're not literal people. Other religions are literal people. We're definitely not literal. We're literate, but not literal. We read a lot, check out the words, but everything has to have an explanation. And God gave Moses on Mount Sinai an explanation of the Torah, which was the oral tradition. And it was passed down from parents to children, next generation. Because like I said, if you look at the Torah just the way it's written, it's a half a book. It's not the religion that the Jews conduct themselves. Another example. It says in the Torah, there comes the holiday of Sukkot. You should take to yourself four kinds of agricultural growths. One of them, it says, and you shall take to yourself a new fruit. So what is it? A pomegranate? Is it a peach? Is it an apple? What's the new fruit? We know today that the fruit that we take on Sukkot and we shake it, wave it together with the palm branch and the willow and the myrtle. What comes with it? We know it's an etrog fruit, which is like a citron. It's a certain kind of a cousin of a lemon, but not quite a lemon. Right? A certain kind of fruit that grows in Israel, but grows also in many places, warm climates, like in Italy or Morocco, warm places. This particular fruit grows. We know today is a citron. It's called an etrog in Hebrew. But how did we know it's an etrog? So it's brought down that God told Moses, he said, this is the fruit. And Moses showed the people what the fruit was. And ever since the Jews were wandering in the wilderness, we've been taking this particular fruit, a specific fruit, that's not in the book. Where we say, go to the good book. It's not in the good book. It's in the oral tradition which was passed down to generation to generation. The laws of slaughtering an animal. How do we know how to shecht an animal? As Jews, we know there's a particular way that we have to prepare an animal to be kosher to eat. A certain way the animal needs to be killed in a very humane way. And the Torah doesn't say anything about it. The Torah says, and you shall slaughter the animal as I commanded you. Where, what? You look around, it doesn't show anywhere how you do it. If you look in the oral tradition, you see there's the laws of shechita. Particular knife has to be a perfect straight knife without any blemishes and has to be done in one shot, and a whole load of series of laws. The shochet can't press it on the animal's neck. It has to be done smoothly, and you have to cut all the windpipe and the food pipe. There's many laws. There's entire books written on the laws of shechita. That's the oral tradition. All the Torah says, all the written book says is, and you shall slaughter the animal as I commanded you. By the way, that's one of the proofs for the oral tradition. As I commanded you. Where did he command us? It's nowhere in the written book. How do we know how we do this slaughtering for a kosher animal? Again, oral tradition. So, together with the book of the Torah came that oral tradition which was given to Moses. And Moses gave it over to his student Joshua. And he gave it over to Aaron and to Elazar. And he told it over to them. Every time he heard it from God, he gave it over to these people that surrounded him, his inner circle. And they taught it, and it says Joshua taught it to the elders. And the elders taught it to the next generation. It went on for 40 generations. Until it finally was recorded for posterity. In the Mishnah and the Talmud. The Mishnah was written in around the year 200 after the Common Era. We're today in 2024. This is in the year 200. The Mishnah was recorded. Somewhere in that neighborhood. So that's when it was recorded. Now, the Torah that is about 1800 years ago. When the Mishnah was recorded. The written Torah was given 3,300 years ago. So do the math. From 3,300 to 1,800 is about 1,500 years. There was no oral tradition written, recorded. How did they have? That's what's called the oral tradition. Because it was passed down from generation to generation. The children were taught the parsha, and then they had What does this mean? He asked the teacher. The teacher said, I heard it from my teacher, heard it from my teacher, heard it from my teacher. This is what tefillin are. Here are the boxes. I pulled out the boxes, showed them what the tefillin are. They want to know, what's the new fruit? Oh, here's an etrog. Here it is. Everything hands-on in Judaism, right? We knew exactly what it was. It was based on a tradition. And so it's important to know, and the Rambam writes, and they all write, that anyone that doesn't accept the oral tradition is considered heretical. A person needs to, we must accept, we want to accept Torah. Torah is not just the written. There was a group, many groups over the years that actually rejected the oral tradition. There's a group in time of the Second Temple, they were known as the Sadducees. The Sadducees were a group that said, we need to accept the Torah just as is written. They didn't want to accept there was another group called the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the group that said, like, no, we have to follow the Torah the way we've been doing it in our homes for many years, for 1,000, 1,500 years, whatever it was. So they were called the Pharisees. Later on, there was another group, maybe a few hundred years later, 500 years later, they were known as the Karaites. Karaites were another group that said, no, we can't accept this oral tradition. We're just going to take the written. So there were different groups all along the way, but the authentic Judaism is based on the oral tradition. So where is the oral tradition? So there was a great rabbi, his name was Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, in the year 200, who decided we need to write it down because now the Jews were just, at that point in time, kicked out of Israel. The Romans had just destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the capital of the Jewish people, destroyed the country of the Jews, and the Jews were exiled. So Rabbi Yehuda the Prince said, if we're not going to write this down now, we'll lose it. So he wrote down the book of the Mishnah. And Mishnah was a collection of all the teachings of the sages over the previous few hundred years. And then after the Mishnah, there was a commentary on the Mishnah called the Gemara. Everybody knows you learn a little Gemara. Gemara is a super commentary on the Mishnah. And the Gemara went on for the next few hundred years. All the great sages that lived the next couple of hundred years after the Mishnah, who studied the Mishnah, and they wrote their notes. 200 or 300 years after the Mishnah was written, the Talmud was compiled. Talmud is the Mishnah with the Gemara together. The super commentary on the Mishnah. And so when people sit and study Torah, the most famous book is the Talmud. The Talmud is the great commentary on the Torah, on the written Torah, which is the collection of the oral tradition that was recorded for posterity by Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, and then the Talmud was recorded by Rav Ashi. So now you know it. Now you know it. Now you know. Now, a number of hundred years later, the Code of Jewish Law was written. Because the code had to be written because there were already many opinions. This one said that, and that one said this. So they had to streamline this whole thing. And that was called the Code of Jewish Law, which was written about 500 years ago. So, I'm not giving now a class on the history of Jewish law, etc. But the idea is that you get the idea of what the oral tradition is. So the oral tradition is when you study Torah, you have to study the written Torah and also the oral tradition of the Torah. That's the tradition of the Jewish people. Now, when we make a blessing on the Torah, we make a bracha on the Torah. So they give us right away two samples, because they're partners, those two samples. They give us a sample from the written Torah, which is the blessing of the Kohanim that we read last week, right? And this week we're going to move on to a little snippet, a little section of the oral tradition. For whatever reason, they chose a particular Mishnah. The Mishnah, as we remember, was the book written by Rabbi Yehuda the Prince in the year 200, recording the oral tradition. So they picked a little piece that's like a delicious piece that's very interesting. And it's a piece that speaks about all the mitzvot of the Torah and different aspects of the mitzvot of the Torah. And at the end of that Mishnah, it mentions that the study of Torah overrides, is greater than all the mitzvot together. And I guess that's why they chose this piece, because this is the blessing on the studying of the Torah. And this particular Mishnah says that the studying of Torah is the greatest thing you can do. It's greater than all of the mitzvahs together. So because of that, they chose this particular Mishnah to be the Mishnah, the snippet, the little sample of oral tradition, because in that little piece, it tells us at the end the greatness of studying Torah. So I guess that's why that piece was chosen. But meanwhile, you have to learn the entire Mishnah, which is a very, very fascinating Mishnah. And we're going to start a little bit today. We'll probably have to continue next week, because it's not so. If you look at page 9, if you have a siddur, you can see it. It speaks about the different categories of mitzvot, of different commandments, right? We all know that there are, how many mitzvahs are there? There are 613 mitzvahs. And there are, out of the 613, 248 do's, positive commandments, and there are 365 negatives. So 248 plus 365, together 613 mitzvahs. Now, out of the mitzvahs, there are some that are more popular than others, more famous than others, and some that are little mitzvahs that we don't know much about, right? So when you learn the whole Torah, if you go through the 5 books of Moses, you will find the 613 commandments. If you really want to know how they work and how to do them, you have to turn to the oral tradition, as we said, right? So this is the oral tradition. We're learning today a little piece of it. So it speaks about different categories of mitzvahs. One of the things that people generally complain about the mitzvahs is it's a little bit too limiting, too rigorous, too people don't like mitzvahs because people don't like when someone tells them what to do. Right? In fact, the word for a person who was religious in Yiddish is frum. Frum a person is like a little, person that does the mitzvah. The person that's like a Jew that does not do the mitzvahs, in Yiddish they call it frei. A frei Yid. A frei Yid means like a free Jew, right? It's like a free spirit. He does what he wants. He's not limited to doing this and doing that. Doesn't have to come to shachas, mincha, ma'ariv. Doesn't have to put on tefillin. Doesn't have to, all the things you have to do in the religion. So a person that's irreligious, let's call them irreligious, right? It's called Yiddish frei. Why is it called frei? Because frei is what people think is freedom. But the question is that truly freedom? Is freedom by not doing things? Does that make you more free if you do less things? Pirkei Avot says that there is no free person, only someone who studies and observes the Torah. So Pirkei Avot is the opposite. You would think that a free person is someone who has to do less. And the Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the father, says, no. Who is the truly free person? Who is the truly unlimited free spirit? It's someone who does the 613, who studies Torah all day. The question is how, why? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, you see people call the irreligious person, they call him a frei, like a freie Vogel, free bird, flying all over the place, right? So why would we call someone who observes the mitzvahs or someone that studies Torah? But then again, there's always the question, what is freedom? Coming up with Pesach now. Pesach is around the corner. So everybody at the beginning of the Seder, we all say, if God would not take the Jews out of Egypt, we'd still be slaves in Egypt today. Still be slaves. Question is, what does that mean? It sort of makes no sense. If God wouldn't have taken out the Jews 3,000 years ago from Egypt, we'd still be slaves in Egypt today. I mean, everybody's free. Well, why would we think that the Jews would still be slaves 3,000 years later? And we say it at every Seder, thank you, Hashem, for taking us out of Egypt, because if not for you, we'd still be slaves today. What are the chances after Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in America? Everywhere slaves are freed, why would Jews be different? Don't think by now, like in the 21st century, we would have already been freed. So what's the whole thing about Pesach? So you have to understand, it's a little bit deeper than that. What we're saying is that if God, not God, would have freed us from slavery, from like working like a. If God would not have made us free on the inside, you could be a free person and you could be the biggest slave. You can be a free person in America or Canada, and you can be the biggest slave on earth. What does that mean? You can be a slave to your bills. You can be a slave to your money, a slave to your job, a slave to your boss. We can be slaves to our lusts. We can be slave to our food. Right? We don't have freedom. What does freedom mean? Freedom means inner freedom. You could be a slave to your headaches, to your sudders, to your foibles, to your idiosyncrasies, to your nature. You could be a slave to all your trauma in life, all your experiences. So what does freedom really mean? Does freedom mean really that no one's whipping you and you're a slave and working hard? No. What does freedom mean? Freedom means inner freedom. Inner freedom. How do we accomplish inner freedom? Inner freedom means that if you can overcome your natural instincts in life, right? So what would be freedom when it comes to food? Overcome your appetite, self-control, right? Intermittent fasting. What do people have? Diets. What's a diet? Why are some people succeed in diets and other people don't succeed in diets? Self-control. That's freedom. How do you become a person of self-control? How do you become that kind of person? How do you save yourself from all your lusts in life and all your addictions? Self-control, inner strength, mind over matter. These are ideas that Torah and mitzvahs give us. Okay. So what we're saying is that if God would not have taken us out of Egypt, we would still be slaves today. We're not just talking about the episode of Egypt. We're talking about if God wouldn't have taken us out of Egypt and brought us to Mount Sinai and given us the Torah. It's one event. God wouldn't have given us a deeper meaning to life if God wouldn't have made us free people, not just on the outside, but on the inside. We would still be slaves today. What does it mean we'd be slaves? We would still be slaves, inner slaves. We'd be slaves to our addictions and our foibles and our headaches and our traumas in life. That's what we're talking about. That's what freedom is. So now we understand what freedom is all about. And so freedom doesn't mean necessarily that we are freed from working for Pharaoh. We're free. To me, to be a free person means to be free, to be a person in control of your destiny, which is associated with the rigorous training program that God gave us at Mount Sinai to train us to exercise self-control and discipline and to be deeper people, to be more spiritual people, and not be so addicted to the material things of this world. That's the Jewish program. That's the program of Torah mitzvahs. So who is the free person? Pirkei Avot says that a free person is not who you think is the free person, just a person who doesn't have a job, doesn't have to work. Person who's retired. How many retired people do I see? They're not free. You have to be free when you're retired means that you have something, a meaningful life. Just that you're not working and living in Miami Beach doesn't make you free. You're going to have a lot of aggravation. Oh, we're not talking about anyone here in particular. Freedom is a deeper idea, a deeper concept. And that's what we say, that the mitzvahs are liberating. The Torah is liberating. The more mitzvahs we do, the more liberated we become. But again, within mitzvahs itself, we have some mitzvahs that are more specific, and you have some mitzvahs which are less specific. And this is what he says of it. These are the precepts which have no fixed measure is prescribed, for which no fixed measure is prescribed. So amongst the mitzvahs, there are some mitzvahs which are limited. You have to put on tefillin this way, that way. You put up on mezuzah and all your doorposts. Mitzvahs, right? But then there's other mitzvahs that he tells us here that even though the Torah tells us to do it, there's really no limit to it. For instance, he's going to tell us one of the mitzvahs is gemilat chasadim, doing favors for people. Even though God has certain things He wants us to do, He wants us to visit the sick. He wants us to go help the people when they die, to take care of them. He wants us to go visit the mourners. He wants us to make the chos and kala happy. Someone's getting married, make them happy, bring them some joy, bring them some gifts. Yeah, gemilat chasadim comes in many ways. So the mitzvahs of tzedakah and gemilat chasadim is more of a particular way. There is financial help you could give people, and then there is doing favors for people. Now, doing favors for people, he tells us, hey, that's a mitzvah that has no end to it. You could be doing favors a whole day. You could do, some people say, what should I do, Rabbi? I have nothing to do with my life. What do you have nothing to do? You could be doing mitzvahs a whole day. Hashem gave us opportunities to help people. There's so many people in this world that are needy, that need help, that are sad, that they need a loan, they need a helping hand. There's so many people in the hospital that need a visitor. There's so many families that are injured, that are mourning. That you can be busy a whole day with doing mitzvahs. If you want to do mitzvahs, have a whole day, especially in the field of gemilat chasadim, of kindness to others. Those mitzvahs of doing charity with others, especially the mitzvahs of money, obviously there's a limit of how much you can give. Because the Torah says, the halacha says, that tzedakah, even though we're told to give as much as we possibly can, but the halacha is that a person should give a certain amount, like a tithe maybe. It says the most a person should give is a fifth of their money. Because you have to have for your family, for your children, for your grandchildren, for yourself. Take care of yourself. God wants us to take care of ourselves too a little bit, right? So finances, there's a limit. As the Talmud says, don't give more than 20% of your income away for charity. So even if you give a good amount, it shouldn't be more than 20%. Even though the Alter Rebbe says that there are certain instances we can give more than 20%. Especially if you're making $3 billion, so then it doesn't hurt to give more than, because there's only so much you need to live on. We're talking about an average person that's living, making a regular living. They should share some of their money. They should give some tzedakah, but hold on to a lot of it. So there's a limit of how much we can give. But gemilat chasadim, that is doing favors for people, sky's the limit. You could be busy a whole day volunteering for the shul. You could always use a few good volunteers, right? Come join, volunteer the shul a whole day. You can come do things. Call the rabbi, ask him, what can you do? Lots of things to do. Lots of mitzvahs we could do. We could do mitzvahs a whole day. This is the most important thing. To preoccupy ourselves all day long. So this is what the Mishnah says. Here the Mishnah tells us now there are a few mitzvahs that unlimited. Gemilat Chasadim, unlimited. And he mentions a few others. He mentions Hapeya. Peya was in the olden days, they used to give, and from their fields, they would give the corners of the field was always given to the poor man. It's one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, one of the beautiful mitzvahs of the Torah. When the Jews were in an agricultural society, they had a field, square field, let's say, right? So they had to leave the four corners of the field, of their property, they'd leave for the poor. That's what the Torah says, leave from the corner of your field. How much is a corner? Right? A corner could be just right where the two ends meet, and give you like two pieces of grain. What is a corner? So that's what we say, Eldon She'enem Shir. You have to give a minimal amount, but if you want to make a big corner, you can give a big corner and say, this is for the poor, right? So there's no limit of how you define the corner of the field. So the corner of the field. What's a corner? In philosophy, they talk about what's a corner. What is a corner is really where two walls, let's say, in your house meet. So what is the corner? So the philosophers are busy, have nothing else to do with their time. They try to figure out what is a corner. Is a corner like two pieces at the end of your wall, in the corner of your house? Or is the corner just that precise place where the two things meet together? Or is the corner just a concept? It's an invisible thing. It's the place, it's something that you can't even see. It's where the two things meet, which is the end of one, beyond the end of one, beyond the end of the other. That's the corner. But we'll leave that for the philosophers. We're not philosophers here. We're just regular Jews, right? So, but the corner of a field, the Torah says you shall leave over for the poor person. So, a person that's a little stingy will say, "Oh, it's just that little corner right there. That's for the poor people." A person that's a little bit more generous might say, "Okay, go 10 feet each way." And then they create the corner from there. A big field. Or another person can say, we're going to go 100 feet each way and then make a circle there. That's the corner. Regardless, Torah is telling that the Mishnah says that this is one of the mitzvahs, that there's no limit. Anyways, I'm going to stop here. The main point I want to say is that although mitzvahs are limited and specific, but they are both expansive on the inside, and also there are many mitzvahs that you can be expansive on the outside too, because you can do an unlimited amount of goodness and kindness for other people. So there's no limit as to the good things we can do in our life. And through that, we merit the coming Mashiach. Amen. Any questions on the class today? Anybody? On the oral tradition, on the different mitzvahs we spoke about?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for explaining.
Thank you.
That all of us in our own way are doing a little bit of mitzvahs here and there.
Eddie, I can vouch for you.
You don't have to vouch for me. I'm sure we can vouch for all of us that somewhere along.
Yeah.
I
know. But then again, Eddie, we just said that although there's a lot of good things we could do, you could do a little bit more. Always do a little bit more. We all could do a little bit more. I remember when people used to come to the Rebbe and come to us, say the Rebbe, I just gave that so much money to Tzedakah. The Rebbe says, why don't you double it? They'd come and say, we're volunteering so much. I said, why don't you volunteer twice as much? Always asking people to do more. Because we all can do a little bit more, even though we do a lot of great things.
Thank you. Shabbos to everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Yeah. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
I just want to make an announcement before we go. Next week, I will not be able to give the class as I'm having my son Shalom Bear is getting married on Wednesday night.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, so I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it on Thursday morning because I probably have a bit of a hangover at that point in time. Just guessing. Hangover.
We hope so. Yeah.
Hangover of symptoms. I'll be like so overflowing with joy.
Have one for us.
I think you need to get your priorities right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a little break next Thursday, but we'll resume the following Thursday, Mr. Shah.
Very good. Mazel
Okay.
tov, mazel
Amen.
tov.
Mazel
The whole
tov.
family.
Lots of
Mazel
stuff.
tov.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Good
Mother.
Shabbos to everybody.
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos, everyone.
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shabbos,
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.